welcome back to Both Sides Book Club.
Hi.
You're with Catie and Debbie, and today we are discussing our first book for November, which is The Last Migration by Charlotte McConaghy. And we are excited about this book because we are changing themes a little bit and talking about things environmental. So, Mum, what's the book about?
So this is a pretty special book. Charlotte is a writer based in Sydney, and it's her first adult literary fiction book, although she has written a number of very successful young adult fiction books before. It's a book, as Catie says, about climate change and the environment. And the main character, Franny Stone, is determined to follow the path, the migration path of the last of the Arctic terns from Greenland all the way down to the Antarctic. Franny's a complicated character. She's running away from her past. She's running towards something. We don't quite know what she's running to. And she finds a fishing charter who, with their captain and crew, are prepared to take her into uncharted waters to follow those Arctic terns.
This world is a world with no animals, well, animals that are going extinct daily, but it's set in the not too far future, so it's a very real world. So we hope you enjoyed it. And for this episode, we're really, really lucky because we have got Charlotte, who's going to have a conversation with us and unpack some of the themes of climate change and the interesting characters that are in this book. We're going to speak to her now. Hey.
Hi, Charlotte.
Great to meet you.
Hi, welcome to Both Sides Book Club.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm Catie and
I'm Debbie.
This is my mum, Debbie.
Great to meet you both. Oh, I didn't realise you were mother and daughter. That's nice.
Yes, we are.
Which often
You look very similar.
it often makes for an interesting discussion because with the mother-daughter element, I can tell Mum, shut up. You don't know what you're talking about.
And likewise.
Okay, this is going to be fun.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and having a chat to us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. We loved your book so much. And it was really, for us, a great change of tone from some of the other books that we'd read too. And also really relevant to the times that we're in as well, I feel.
Yes, yeah. I think it was a bit of a strange coincidence that it came out in this kind of insane world.
Totally.
Yeah, it's quite, it's matching of that dystopian world we're living in, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah, I think unfortunately it is. It's like it's sort of coming true, much to my horror.
So let's dive straight in. So The Last Migration, fantastic book. Thank you so much for writing it. It's very beautiful. We loved it. And especially,
thank you.
I loved it especially as I'm a big ocean lover. So I was like, oh, take me away.
It's funny. I've been my partner and I have been camping at the beach this week, and so we're right there on the ocean front, just looking out over the beach and the sea. And there are so many birds. You know, there are two nesting pairs of curlews just sort of there, and there's just so many birds. And all week I've been sitting there with my coffee, just really ruminating on the book, going, well, but what if it wasn't like that? You know, and seeing dolphins and all winter we've been seeing the whales. But what if there weren't any? It really has made me think a lot. Oh, bless you.
So where did the inspiration for the book come from?
Well, it's a funny thing. I find it difficult to pinpoint exactly where it came from because it was sort of one of those things that I think came in so many different pieces over so long, and in a way it's sort of a book that I think has been sitting within me for a very long time. I was feeling worried and sad about the state of the world and climate crisis and the extinction crisis, and I didn't quite know how to deal with that in terms of writing about it. So I put it in a drawer, and I went traveling. I wanted to kind of explore the place that my ancestors had come from. So I went to Ireland and traveled around there and really fell in love with the place. And I was also watching the birds and learning about all these migrating birds, particularly the geese, which I just love.
Yes.
And I couldn't stop thinking about, these amazing journeys that they went on and imagining where they were going and what they must be like. And I started learning about the fact that these journeys were getting more and more difficult for them because of us.
Yeah.
And I think that's just where it started to come from, that idea of a woman who decided to follow some birds. And slowly I started to research more and more about climate change at that point. And I think although I hadn't set out to write a book about climate change, I did want to write about our connection with nature.
Yeah.
And I think it's really hard to do that these days without talking about climate change as well. So I don't think you should really ignore it. It's too big. I lent into it instead of avoiding it. And that's how I started to come up with these horrible statistics about all the animals that we've killed.
Yeah.
It's nearly 70% now of all the Earth's wildlife. And so that's sort of how that environmental side of the book started to come in. And I was imagining, like you were, what the planet would look like when it got to be 100% of the animals are gone. And it was so upsetting that I knew immediately that was where I needed to set the book.
Yeah. It is such, I feel like, well, for me personally, the topic of climate change is so haunting and also so big and overwhelming. It is really hard, I think, to put tangibly like how you feel about it, or like to put all those bits of information together and go, oh, I understand this is how I can help, or like, and there's so many conflicting opinions on it and stuff as well. So I actually loved how your book mirrored in a way the documentary that David Attenborough just released, which
quite coincidentally.
I'd watched David Attenborough's documentary, and Mum and I were discussing, which is partly the reason why we chose your book actually, because we were discussing about the David Attenborough and about like preserving the wild places, and I felt like there was a real mirroring in your book of that. It created something that made climate change personal and actually quite relatable.
Yeah, rather than political arguments, about carbon credits and greenhouse gases and do they exist and blah blah blah. All of those things that just keep getting battered around the world. It made it incredibly personal and also quantifiable.
Exactly.
So congratulations on that, because I think that it was incredibly difficult to do, but you've succeeded it, because you go, well, it actually means that no, you go to the beach, there aren't any birds, there aren't any fish, you're not going to see dolphins.
Yeah.
Which I think all of us can relate to far more easily than a bunch of statistics.
Yeah, and I think the simple journey of just a woman following birds, it's like, well, we're not the only wild beings on the planet, that there's so many other wild beings that have lost so much too, and it's just like, maybe we should be connecting to that. Was that something you were thinking about?
Absolutely. I think that's the power of fiction, is what you guys are talking about. It's a way to help people access feelings that they're not sure how to articulate.
Yes.
It's also a way to make the science accessible.
Yeah, very much so.
Because sometimes that stuff's really hard to kind of conceive of, and it's I think it's important to have fiction that links our emotions and that sort of personal struggle so that everyone can kind of read about it and think, well, how would I feel in that situation? And certainly one of the main things I wanted to do with this was to, I guess, in a sense, remove humans from the center of all things.
Yes.
I think you mentioned that, we're not the only creatures here that deserve to be here, and that's one of the kind of fundamentals of this book. And there's a few moments of exploration in and around, well, why are we only trying to save the creatures that serve us, that will create our food or whatever. And I just found that really heartbreaking that that's the only priority we have. And I know that there's practical things that come into it, but it really upsets me to think about all the beautiful, beautiful, beautiful things that we're going to lose because they don't serve us. So I think that this book's really trying to fight against that and just be about the loss of animals because they're beautiful and they exist.
Yes. Yeah. And they deserve to exist just as much as we do.
That's right.
But
yeah, exactly.
The thing that I loved about, to go back to the David Attenborough thing as well, I love what he illuminated is that we might be, I guess, so small-minded to think about only preserving the animals that do serve us, but actually it's all the little animals too that you might not realize help the harmony work,
It is really key to all of our survival.
Yeah,
literally.
I wanted to ask you about Franny. I mean, obviously we have.
I loved her.
I know she is such an extraordinary character, so flawed and so damaged, but yet so brave and so strong. But she's otherworldly. There is that element. Is she fae or she's almost kind of like a selkie, except she's not a selkie because she's not a seal, but she has got, that affinity for cold water, and is it her element in the sea. Was there anything, can you talk to us a little bit about the creation of Franny? I mean, was there any particular sort of myth or legend that you accessed to give you an idea as to how to create her?
That you mentioned selkies because that is pretty much it.
It is a selkie. I thought, well, she's a selkie. She is. She has all of the characteristics except she's a bird, not a seal.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Well, I grew up loving those stories, and that's
me too.
Those Celtic myths.
Yeah.
I love selkie stories. And for anyone who doesn't know, they're seals who can shed their seal skins and live on land. And what's, I think, the tragedy of them is that they are able to fall in love and have families, but they're forever bound to the ocean. So they're not happy till they return there. And I think that definitely did, even without me being fully conscious of it, it definitely informed Franny 100%.
Yeah.
She's a creature who is very... she's kind of wild. She's a bit migratory like the birds she loves. She's really, really tied to the ocean. And there's a line in the book where she thinks it's not fair to be the kind of creature who's able to love but unable to stay.
Yes.
So I think that was very much the selkie kind of myth coming into play. She's a fun one. She kind of... it's almost like she came fully formed, and I was just a witness to her in a way, which seems strange to say, but she definitely kind of guided me through the story. And there's a lot of things in her that I wish I could be more of. So I think I was playing out a bit of wish fulfillment. She's so brave. She's so determined. She's really connected to nature. She's also really flawed as well. There's all she wants is love and connection and family and a place to belong. But she's kind of got these wandering feet that are, they make it really hard for her to have those things.
Yes.
And we kind of see that played out with her husband.
Yeah.
But I really like the idea that she's kind of, she doesn't subscribe to normal values, ambition and wealth and stability. I think that makes her creaturely, which is really interesting to me, that there are some people who are led through life more by instinct than by anything else.
Yes.
So yeah, I had a lot of fun
Writing
with
her.
Do you think? You go. No, you go.
Do you still think about her? Because we've asked this question to quite a few of our authors that have had really, really strong main protagonists in their books, and they've all gone, oh no, been there, done that, I just sort of move on.
Not Holly Wainwright.
Holly,
she still feels connected.
But generally they said no, like, oh, that was so long ago that I was writing that no, I kind of packaged them up and put them in a drawer and move on. Do you feel that way about
No,
Franny?
No, I miss Franny. I really miss her. she's like a part of me, I think. Even though she's very much not me, but once you've spent so much time with someone, they become like a best friend or a family member. And it was probably 5 or 6 years ago now that I was writing her, but I really do miss her. And I sometimes wonder if I'll ever create another character I love as much.
Right. How long did the novel actually take you to write? How long were you working on it?
It took about 2 years to write the first draft, and then it went into the editing process with my editor. So that then took another year of editing, and then another 2 years of fussing around with the publishing side of things until it came out this year. So it was a long process to get from the start to finish.
Do you think her character came to you intuitively? I just find it interesting that you said she's quite an intuitive character and she goes through life intuitively. And I just wondered, did she come to you intuitively as well? Do you think maybe that's where she has that
definitely. I think so. I think it was because she came so intuitively, I felt that was the natural way for her to kind of exist in the world. And I think I was just writing all these things that I sort of was trying to work out, and all these things that I wished I could be. And it's hard for me to kind of dig down into her actually, because she was such an instinctive thing.
That's amazing. With I think as well, the way that the book's written, you gradually get to understand Franny a little bit more. And I feel like it's a really, because she's got so much depth and so much darkness and wildness to her, you start to see some of the pain and you start to see some of the scars and stuff. I feel like sometimes when you write in this sort of non-linear form, there is probably the risk of that you won't capture the audience the whole way through, or it can be too disjointed. Is that something you think about? And how, if it is, how did you overcome that?
I think it is something that you need to worry about, because there's a lot of people who hate that form. And for me, it was kind of a no-brainer. I mean, on a really simple level, it made a lot of sense to me to write in that multiple timelines, because I just get bored. It doesn't engage me enough if I'm just writing from one character's point of view with no kind of exploration of her life. It's so much more interesting to me if we learn about her along the way rather than just be told about her up front. And I wanted us to also be able to kind of experience those moments in her life in a really intimate way. So I knew that I wanted to go there and experience those scenes with her. In terms of working out how to kind of counter that dislike that a lot of people have, I think on a practical level it really helps to switch timelines at a point of really high tension. So you're sort of, in a sense, creating cliffhangers, little mini cliffhangers along the way that make people kind of want to come back to that timeline and keep reading.
Almost the way in which, I was just thinking, almost the way in which, the 19th century novelists used to do when their novels were serialized in the paper, like Dickens, for example, is that, and actually Alexander McCall Smith, I think when he first started writing the #1 ladies detective agency.
No, yeah.
It was written episodically. So there always had to be, as you say, a hook, a cliffhanger at the end of each section to get the reader in. So the same
That's
sort of
right,
thing.
totally. A little teaser that kind of so people really want to get back to it, and you need to do that with both the timelines, so that they're really wanting to get back to both. And I also think you kind of need to have them both running alongside each other, so they both build to their respective climaxes at the same time, and that way you kind of have a cohesive structure and form. You also need to, I think you also need to link the timelines with theme, so that you're exploring the same themes with them both.
Okay.
And that way they feel linked and like you're not telling two different stories.
Yeah.
So I think those are the kind of things that will allow readers to forgive you for jumping around in time.
So
and hopefully, it creates tension.
Yeah. So do they tend
and
to come?
mystery.
I'm really interested. So do they tend to come in the first draft, or is that something that you kind of work on progressively after after an edit and in the second and third drafts, just to kind of tweak that sort of tension?
Yeah, I actually wrote the book in exactly the order that you'd read it in, and had those through lines kind of running through. Yeah. It's kind of, I think, it's something that I do naturally. There's a certain rhythm to the way that you write something that's moving in time. And I think I did that a lot with my YA fantasy and sci-fi stuff. So it was quite a natural space for me to sit in. So it definitely... I didn't need to work on it too much. It's just naturally how I write. Yeah.
Actually, just going back to, just kind of like very neatly segue into your YA fantasy series. So for any of
anyone that doesn't know what YA fantasy
so it's young adult. I know. So if anybody,
just got to make sure everyone knows.
It's true. So if anyone who's watching or listening isn't aware, The Last Migration is Charlotte's first adult literary fiction novel, but you've had great success previously with a series of young adult fantasy fiction novels that had the most amazing covers, by the way. I used to own a bookshop and loved hand selling them. So what are the differences? I mean, how did you make that transition between writing young adult fiction and adult fiction? I mean, obviously you've just talked a little bit about the sequencing of writing, but were there other major things?
Yeah, definitely. It was actually a really difficult thing to do. It was quite a challenge.
Yeah.
I started writing quite young. I was 14 when I started my first book, and that got published at 17. And that kind of took me on this whirlwind journey of writing basically what I was reading, what I wanted to read. And that's always been my rule. I'll always just write the book that I'm going to read. So as I grew up, as a kid, I was reading a lot of fantasy, a lot of sci-fi. And so that was naturally what I was writing. And as I grew up, I guess my interest shifted a little bit. I still love it all, but I have shifted into being more interested in fiction. And so it felt like the normal progression to take, but it was quite a difficult thing to do. I mentioned that there's a lot of structural elements that you can kind of use in either genre, and that's definitely true. So that helped. But in fantasy and sci-fi, you have these kind of sprawling worlds and hosts of characters, and if you get stuck on one, you can jump to another. There's only your imagination to limit you, basically. And with adult fiction, particularly writing one point of view, you're really confined to that one woman and the rules of the real world. And I think my plotting can get a bit big at times. That's definitely from my background. I don't really love getting too bogged down in what would really happen. I think, I find that really constricting, and you don't need to do that. You can be free to kind of write whatever you want to write in whatever genre, I think. I tend to live in the realm of allegory sometimes and wish fulfillment and speculation. And
I think that's great because I would personally, and this is not to cause offense to any author or reader, but I am definitely not a science fiction or fantasy fiction type person. You like facts. I like facts. I feel like I need to, and I connect with characters that I feel like I could be in their positions. Whereas if it's too just me personally, sci-fi or whatever, I just I'm lost.
You didn't used to like fiction at all. Catie actually never read fiction when she was a child, and even as a teenager, you really struggled to read fiction. But you would sit down with a book of facts and read all day.
Yeah, so that actually gives me a lot of excitement that you say that someone can write from a different genre, because I often if and again, not to cause offense, but if there was an author that was, heavily written in sort of fantasy world, I would be hesitant to pick up a book that was written from a different genre, because I'd be going, oh, is it going to really relate? But I think your writing is such a testament to that, because I felt to the positive side, because I felt when I was reading your book, oh my gosh, I was there visualizing it each time it swapped scenes. I was when it went back to being on the boat, I heard the wind of the sails all going through, not the sails but the on the boat, I felt that I was really there, and it felt so visceral and so real. So I basically am paying you a massive compliment and saying thank you for opening my eyes.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it is. I totally get what you're saying. Sometimes I can be even a bit skeptical of authors that change genres, but it's crazy to be that way. I mean, there's really no reason people can't switch genres, and I think fundamentally what's great about a story is, as you just said, if you can put yourself in it and experience it and feel it, and that comes down to the writing, no matter what genre you're in.
Yeah, exactly.
If you can make people connect to a character, then you'll get them. You'll win them over.
Exactly. Mind you, though, I really liked Blade Runner, so go figure.
Well, there you go. Exactly.
Go figure.
So I think you're right. I think it's to do with characters. I think you're right. There you go.
Just referring back to what Catie was saying, and you both said about about being able to put yourself in that situation, and as Catie said, the visceral visual aspect of the book, particularly I think when we're on the boat. Do you again for anybody who doesn't know a little bit more about Charlotte, you have degrees. You have a master's in screenwriting. And sorry, and I've completely forgotten what your other degree was in. But do you think
it's just a graduate degree in screenwriting, so 2.
Oh, okay. So you have both. Do you think that that experience or that studying of screenwriting helped you to portray that visual aspect of the book?
Interesting. I think certainly it probably did. It's funny. The thing about screenwriting is what my screenwriting training taught me was actually more about story structure, and character development and the tools of genre, rather than how to write visually. Because one of the strange things, I suppose, is that what you're writing in screenwriting is actually much briefer than what you would write in a novel. So it's the director's job and the DOP's job to come up with how it looks. It helps you to you're not doing a lot of describing of scenery or how people look. It helps if you have a visual style, of course, and you know what's going to be cinematic and dramatic rather than internal. But, you know, what I would describe in a couple of paragraphs in a book would need to be described in one sentence in a screenplay.
Okay, yes.
They're all about brevity.
Yeah.
So I think I'm naturally quite a visual writer. I love oceanic and icy landscapes. So I wanted to kind of be out in that, and that was the draw for me of writing about this book. It was allowing me to kind of live somewhere remote and wild, and you know, that idea of countering loneliness. I think I'm from a very lonely place, and weirdly, it's writing about a lonely character is actually a really great way of reaching lonely people and making them feel less lonely. Yes. There's something really comforting in that. But yeah, in terms of the visual aspect, it's a subconscious thing that I do. There's certain things that I want to be able to see and feel and touch in my writing, and then there are other things that I have no interest in describing. So, for example, how characters look, I don't find that particularly interesting and it's not what I imagine. I'll give a detail or two, but I'm not really that interested in it, whereas the natural world around them kind of comes alive in my mind, and that's sort of where I write myself into. And that's good for screenwriting as well. But
I'm interested when you're talking about that loneliness and that connection, because I feel like Franny in her character, even though she's very like strong-willed and she knows who she is in some elements, she does have that like lack of sense of belonging, I think. And when she comes onto the boat, you feel like for the first time she's really belonging somewhere. Would you agree? And could you tell us a little bit about the family on the boat?
A nice way to put it. She is a terribly lonely character, and that's a real sadness about her. And I think she finds a home with Niall, her husband, as well. But you know, there's this battle in her around, it's either instinct or trauma, and it's probably a combination of both that kind of drive her to always be moving. And one of the nice things about Niall is that he is trying to sort of help release her from the shame of just being what she is. But she's unable to kind of feel that and forgive herself while she's with him. But on the boat, she kind of is able to reach that point. And I think that is because of this kind of amazing new family that she's found. I think to create them, I kind of laid them all out on a mind map. I knew what their roles needed to be, so I started giving them backstories and personalities. I wanted to have fun with them. I wanted them to be a bit of life for her, you know, to try and bring her back to life, fun, laughter. They started, however, to feel a bit flat while I was writing them. And I think it's because I forgot the fundamental principle that the side characters need to provide some counterpoint or some conflict.
Yes.
So I needed them to really challenge Franny and what she believed. So I sort of reconceived them a little bit and gave them a bit more meatiness to their perspectives and point of views of their beliefs, particularly Ennis. In the first draft, he was kind and supportive, and I didn't really want to lose his kindness, but I definitely needed to make him more combative towards her. So I sort of pushed his point of view a bit further away from hers. And I just wanted all the characters to go on a journey of transformation. And I think that's the main reason that Franny was able to connect with them, because they gave her the opportunity to transform, and they were challenging her to think differently and to be less judgmental, and vice versa too. She has a massive impact on them and their kind of transformations as well.
I want to ask something. Let's talk about Ennis, because I feel like they had such conflicting point of views on things. And I think especially... I don't know, after learning about climate change myself, I was just like, you're a bloody idiot. Like, look around you. Like, are you for serious? There's like no wildlife. And you are like, I was just like, I wanted to shake him. I got frustrated at him. But in a way, I feel like and in the end, there's like harmony between them. And in many ways, they actually aren't that dissimilar. Well, would you agree?
Feather, excuse the pun. They are really similar.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things I guess one of the things I wanted to say is that there's this huge schism in the world now between conservation and farming or fishing or living off the land.
Yes.
And one of the problems is that we're not communicating and we're judging each other and,
yes.
we're blaming each other and we're just fighting. And I think, we are all the same essentially. We've just come from a different place and we've got different means of supporting ourselves and different skills. And there's, the people who are living off fishing live under immense financial pressure. Their lives are not easy by any means. Yeah. And so it's sometimes not as easy as just picking up and starting afresh. Like, we need to actually be providing them with support. Our governments need to be supporting people to reskill and change their jobs so that they're doing something that's sustainable rather than
I really felt like, I'm going to interrupt you again.
Sure.
I really did feel like, see, look, this is mum and daughter, I'll tell her shut up. But I really did feel like their relationship was a metaphor for like what is happening in the world right now, because I'd love to delve a little bit more into that, and also like your research perhaps behind that with that climate change twist, because on one hand you have Ennis, that exactly what you've just said, that's his livelihood, that's his life, he's like that's his morals, how he provides, how he his identity. But then you also have Franny, who's been educated in a different way, and she's creating identity and like hopefully saving the turns. So you've got this, like, which is exactly how I feel like we are in the planet right now, is this big world of like a cluster, excuse my language, bit of a clusterfuck, close your ears, where it's like this lack of universal information that is able to really teach us all how we can apply it in so many different like worlds and different value systems and stuff. Was this something that you were researching or thought about when you were putting their characters together?
Yeah, I think naturally that comes up when you're writing about the end of the world. And you start to think about, well, why are we letting this happen? And it's because of this misinformation that's being spread, and it's because we're the most, I think, separate and isolated than we've ever been. We're all getting told different things. We all get told that different things matter more. So some of us still believe that the economy is the most important thing. Some of us still believe that growth is still the most important thing. And it's really hard for us all to be on the same page when we're all getting told different things. So I don't know what the solution is anymore, because social media has pretty much done this to us. We're all getting different news. We're getting fed completely opposite things.
Oh, don't get me started on that.
Yeah, I know.
Social dilemma. It's too much.
Yeah.
It's too much.
It's terrifying. It's really terrifying. But I think, and that's where our governments need to come in. They're not doing what they need to be doing, which is unifying us.
Yes.
And it's heartbreaking, really, because I think we're just going to keep going down this path if we don't make some massive changes.
Yeah,
I really liked the section where the Sagani, the fishing has now been banned, and Sagani has goes to Canada, is there, and that period where the crew are on land. And we get to meet Samuel's family, and I think that's a really, really clever counterpoint to the story, because I think through that section you are able really, really well to put those conflicting views and again personalize them. So for me, that actually was one of the strongest parts of the book, because again, Franny reacts to the relationships with the children, and she reflects, obviously on her and Niall's relationship, but it's just such a nice balance between this quest that Ennis has and Franny has and the crew on board with the reality of the families and their backstories.
And I guess it's that idea of there's people, there's real people who are relying on these men to catch the fish. Yeah. So it's always good to remind ourselves of that when we get super annoyed at them for doing it.
Yeah, exactly. Mm. Yeah.
Did you have to do much research into the birds, the terns and stuff?
Yeah, I did. I did so much. I actually initially didn't know which bird it should be following. Yeah. I kind of had a sense of it, and then I needed to sort of figure out which it would be. So I was researching a lot of different birds, and the second I came across the Arctic tern, I just immediately fell in love with it. I knew it was the one. It has the longest migration of any animal, and over the course of its 30-year lifespan, it travels to the moon and back 3 times the equivalent distance, which I just found so beautiful. Yes. And it kind of immediately became a metaphor for courage, the courage that Franny would need to complete her journey. And she was always able to come back to these birds.
And you gave me goosebumps.
Well, if they, it was so important to me, if they can make this impossible migration against all odds, which we're making so much harder for them every single year, then she could too.
Yeah,
she took so much
fragility as well.
And I do too. Absolutely, yeah. They were in such peril the whole way. And yet still trying to make it. Like, that's so beautiful.
The book kind of ends on a hopeful note, and I think
are we going to do spoiler about what happens or not?
Oh yeah, we definitely should do that. So anybody that is listening and doesn't want a spoiler, please go make yourself a cup of tea, say hello to your kids, pat your dog, or I don't know.
Just mute us for a minute. Because
spoiler alert, we're going to start talking about the ending
of the book.
So it ends on a hopeful note, which is really lovely and endearing, and not to compare you with David Attenborough again, but really I felt like the two of you really came down on me about climate change in the same week, and I was like, okay, you'll need to educate yourself.
Yes.
But as does his, because it ends in that, all hope isn't lost. I mean, when we talk about climate change and we talk about what's happening in the world right now, and this farming versus economy versus government, like it's all quite daunting and create quite a dystopian world. But I am definitely an optimist, and I do believe in hope, and I do believe that we as humans actually do have good nature. And if we come together, we can create a better environment. Was this like, were these the sort of feelings that you were feeling too when you put the ending together?
Yeah. I mean, I'm the same. I'm such an optimist. I can't live my life feeling defeatist and nihilist. And so it was a natural thing for me to do, to have this kind of hopeful ending. And without giving away specifically what it is, it's fine to say that it's hopeful. We've already said
spoiler. You can say what happens. Anybody who's listening now says you're right. We told you off earlier.
So the terms make
it. It's still a very sad book, but it was really important that it be a hopeful ending. I think we're so saturated by bad news these days, and it's all around us constantly, and I think it really can make us apathetic and despairing. It's hard not to switch off from it all. it was a hard thing to do, to write a book about this. And I'd have to kind of remind myself constantly where I was trying to get to, and the fact that I am an optimist. You get swallowed into feeling just desperately sad. And I was writing about a bleak possible future, but the key thing for me is that we're not there yet. We still have time. There's still time. I wanted this book to be about hope more than anything, because hope is energizing. It leads to action. I think that's what we need most right now. We need action. There's not.
Wow, that's
there's
real
no
talk.
point in hope.
Hope leads to energizing. I love that.
And to action.
Yeah.
No, I think.
There's no point in hope if it doesn't energize us and lead us to action. So this book was kind of my battle cry to that, and a call to arms. And like you said, it's also a reminder that we as a species are often very destructive, but it's not all we can be. We are nurturing too, and I think that's the truer, more real thing. We see it every day in all those kind of small moments of kindness, generosity and caring. I think that's the real stuff, and that's the stuff we need to feed.
Yeah. And I think that, the book does that so beautifully. If it didn't have that element of hope and belonging and reconciliation as its ending, then, it would have been bleak and nihilistic, and
it's kind of a testament. I feel like those themes are a testament to what the world needs right now. We need universal belonging. We need this universal
connection,
hope, connection, all these things that we, everybody I'm sure would agree with me. Exactly what you said earlier in the interview. We're the most isolated yet connected we've ever really been.
Yeah. It's, the last thing we need is people feeling like it's time to give up.
Yes.
So it's really not. It's the opposite. It's the time to fight.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And I feel like this chat hopefully is aiding on that path as well. So everybody read The Last Migration, please, if you haven't. It'll make you fall in love with nature again and remind you all that we need to protect these beautiful wild places and these beautiful wild animals.
Absolutely.
Thank
so Charlotte,
you.
just before we finish, I believe you're well on your way to writing or to finishing your second adult novel. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what we've got to look forward to?
I have finished it. It's been edited. It's all done, and it'll be coming out next year in August. It's called Once There Were Wolves, and it's the story of a biologist who is reintroducing wolves into a Scottish Highlands forest. So in order to kind of rewild the landscape there and fight climate change and all that sort of stuff. And it's a mystery. It's a love story. It's a story about sisters.
Oh, fantastic.
Story about the healing power of nature. All the stuff that I tend to come back to constantly.
Amazing.
And hopefully it'll be, a good follow-up and a bit more kind of balm to this terrible time that we live in.
It sounds like you really like the wild places. So where's the first place you're looking forward to seeing?
when we can.
Good question. Well, I'm dying to get back overseas, but I also have this terrible guilt about flying. And then the carbon that it produces. So I'm a bit conflicted about that. Maybe I'll try and just get out and see Australia, see more of Australia. We live in such a beautiful country, and I don't think we explore it enough, and we can kind of do that with less of an impact. So actually I'd love to go to the Great Barrier Reef. I've never been there. And
wow. You've never been to the Great Barrier Reef?
Oh my goodness.
I swear, you'll write a book about the Great Barrier Reef.
And also the Migaloo Reef in Western Australia. You can actually walk off the beach and snorkel. It's just absolutely spectacular. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm putting them on both on
Yes.
my list, top of my list.
Yeah, and do it soon, please, because you will be wanting to write a book about it. Literally, I feel like anyone that goes to the Great Barrier Reef now is like, oh my gosh.
You're actually off there next week.
Yes, I am. That's really fun.
Oh, wow. How gorgeous.
Yeah,
enjoy it. Where are you guys at the moment? Where are you based?
We
In
are
northern New South Wales.
Northern New South Wales. So
on the coast.
Yeah. Well, we're not actually.
Well,
I live in a property in the country, and Catie lives on the coast, on the beach. So, but within about half an hour of each other.
Beautiful.
Yeah, we love it. It's been
lovely. Well, it's great that you can get up into Queensland.
Well, we can because we're in the bubble, so we're allowed to.
We're
actually allowed to go anywhere in Queensland now,
which has been really great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's actually been an amazing. In case you haven't gathered, I'm also a big outdoors person. My partner and I surf and we sail and we spend lots of time in nature. We love it. So it's been amazing being like in sort of we're not rural, but we're not rural either. And it's been amazing spending this time just being able to like fish and don't worry everybody, I'm not casting huge nets. I catch one fish and I feed a whole bunch of people with it. Very safe.
Perfect. Sustainable fishing.
Yes. But yeah, it's been awesome. We've loved it. And yourself, where are you?
I'm in Sydney, I get really bogged down with the city thing.
Yeah.
I'm desperate to get out.
Yeah. I bet a person like you would be itching to get into some natural places.
Yep.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Charlotte.
Thank you for spending so much time with us. It's been an absolute delight talking with you, and congratulations again on an amazing book. And we look forward to talking to you again when the new book comes out.
Yeah, sure, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. It's been lovely to chat.
Amazing. Thank you, Charlotte. Have a beautiful week.
Thanks.
Thank you too. Bye.
Wow, that was a great conversation. Thank you so much, Charlotte, for talking to us. We really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was awesome. And it was really great to get a different perspective on putting stories together, different writing styles, how important it is that we come together to create conclusions about climate change, and how special these wild places are. So thank you so much for talking to us, and we hope you all really enjoyed listening along and hope you learnt a few things too. So it's that time of the episode.
It is time for our next book. So why don't you tell us about it?
Yeah, amazing. I'm excited about this one. So this one's called Honeybee by Craig Silvey. And it's a book of many, many themes. But to wrap it up really neat and short, it's about a young boy called Sam who finds himself in the middle of the night on a bridge, looking down and thinking about taking his life. So it starts off quite ominous, and it's a sad beginning. He meets this guy Vic, who's also on the bridge. He's an older guy who is also feeling like this is his last day on Earth. And they see each other and form a very special connection instantly, and decide to create a very unlikely friendship that they make a sort of a promise to each other. So the book, it tackles many themes, but the major ones are gender, diversity, unlikely friendships, and finding oneself in amongst a world of stereotypes. And it ends in a very fun drag showcase. So it's an awesome book, really interesting themes, and I cannot wait to unpack it all with you.
And for those of you who know Craig Silvey, Craig wrote a fantastic novel called Jasper Jones 11 years ago, which I'm sure many of you have read and loved. And believe me, you are just going to adore this one too.
Amazing, everybody. So have a great rest of the week and happy reading.
We hope you enjoyed watching this episode.
If you did, please leave us a comment below. We'll see you soon.